we'll call this meeting to order. So thank you for your patience here. As we do every meeting, even though this is virtual, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good. Okay, first up, we've got the approval of the memorandum of the April 6th, 2020 regular meeting. A copy has been posted. Please also note that if you're going to be speaking, making a motion, just if you could state your name beforehand so that Amy can record it properly, and then we'll do a verbal roll call vote. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the memorandum of the April 6th, 2020 regular meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Councilor Melton?
Plunkett. Sorry.
Oh, it's Plunkett. Sorry. I was looking at the agenda, not at the picture. Okay, Amy, can you do a roll call vote on that?
Sure. President Garrett?
Yes.
Vice President Traylor?
Yes.
Councilor Burke?
Yes.
Councilor Choi?
Yes.
Councilor Culp?
Yes.
Councilor Melton?
Yes.
And Councilor Plunkett?
Yes.
Very good. The memorandum of the April 6, 2020 regular town council meeting is approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, we have requests to speak. Anyone that would request to speak, please raise your hand and we will call on you electronically. Or Amy, do we have any other people that have pre-submitted to speak as well?
No, we don't have anyone that has pre-submitted.
Okay, I do see one hand raised. We can promote that person to speaker.
And Pat is still the host, so I can't get in there to promote him, I don't think.
Pat, can you promote the attendee that has?
I have promoted, and I will also turn the hosting back over to Amy.
Okay.
Very good. If you, the person that raised their hand, I'm sorry, I can't see who that is, but if you can state your name and address, and once doing so, you have 3 minutes. I'll give you a 1-minute warning just so you're aware of the time, and you may speak on any subject.
Amy, you'll have to unmute her.
Okay. Is
I think it was Sally.
Sally Zalonis, 40 South 3rd Street, Zionsville. It's actually a question. I see on the agenda that one of the items is for building demo appropriation for the PNC location. And I'm wondering what the plans are for that site once demolition is completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. The requests to speak really aren't for Q&A. They're really more for statements to be made. What I would encourage you to do is Mayor Styron and I host regular meetings every other week. And they're live interactive sessions for exactly that kind of question. And
yeah,
so
the first time I attended one of those, I was kicked out twice. So I don't know if it's gotten any better than that before. Noticeably, you've had problems with Zoom meetings. I got kicked out on the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting twice. Needless to say, I think there are problems with Zoom meetings, but I'll send an email to both of you regarding it, but certainly I think the public demands an opportunity to know what the plans are for this site.
So so if you go ahead and submit that question, I'm sorry you're having technology problems.
I don't think it's me. I think it's the town actually that's having technology problems.
Okay. Well, you can submit that question too if you would like, but what I would say is submit, any questions you would like to me or to the mayor, to both of us. We'll add that to the list. All of these meetings are also recorded, so if there's some issue of you getting kicked out or it kicking you out, then you're able to view these answers through YouTube archive as well, just so you're aware. Thank you, Sally. Appreciate that. I got a text from Craig Triscari. Amy, he would like his 3 minutes as well to speak on an
Okay.
issue that's on the agenda
He's
today.
fine.
If we can.
Allow him to talk. Okay. And
then you can move Sally back to an attendee.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Craig, is that you?
Yes, I didn't realize if I need to talk here or during the remonstration of phase 2. So I think this 3 minutes is just general discussion, not remonstration. Is that correct?
No, actually, because there is not a public speaking portion of that specific issue that I'm sure is issue A, you're welcome to speak in remonstration on that issue right now with the same rules. If you can just give your name and address, and then I'll start you on your 3 minute timer.
Okay, and my wife is with me as well, so I'd like to absorb her time as well for remonstration for a total of 6 minutes, if that's possible. Thank you.
Yes, if you can just state her name for the record. I'm assuming same address, just so we have all of that. That's no problem.
Okay, so my name is Craig Triscari and Barbara Triscari. We're at 3270 Paddock Road. My property is directly adjacent to the proposed mega warehouse in Saratoga. My area is the largest exposed area in the housing community. My property also has the largest easement of drainage in Saratoga community. I do not intend to read past explanations of why this plan has been poorly designed by the developer Van Trust. Instead, I would like to address simple facts for the poorly conceived and extremely intrusive development that we're going through now. So fact 1, Van Trust served this community with their plan to develop what they call phase 2. This community received that November 27th during Thanksgiving holiday for planning board meeting on the 16th of December before the Christmas holiday to pass this through the board and town council during the holiday meeting. Fact 2, the letter was misleading to provide false information informing the community as well as the planning board, and I quote, with excellent access for both Country Road 400 South and 300 East, and therefore I-65, this property is ideally suited for warehousing and distribution. Van Trust knew this was false. Zionsville Comprehensive Plan confirms this false statement. Van Trust, fact 3, Van Trust is in violation of phase 1 commitment, attaching one 8-inch water line into a pre-existing water line under Saratoga. Van Trust, billion-dollar company, just could not figure out how to engineer this single line emplacement for nearly over a year. Fact 4, Van Trust established a water line to their building that dead ends with the intention to build next to the community. This resulted in the problem of hooking up more people online on the water line. This self-imposed by Van Trust, a failed system for the community from the start. Fact 5, during the pandemic, Van Trust continued to build in the warehouse in Zionsville and Whitestown, despite the design solution that would take 0 people to hook up to the water system. Van Trust has not provided Whitestown the design or surveyed the ground to do this. Instead, they continue to impact in a negative way the water sources for this community and have left this community without water in some areas and homes during this pandemic. Fact 6, this plan goes against Zionsville Comprehensive Rural Plan. Fact 7, home values are being negatively impacted by this development with no current value added by Van Trust, Whitestown, and currently Zionsville since 2016. Fact 8, phase 2 will divert significant water off proposed 81 acres of land that will impact dozens of other homes' water supply. Fact 9, no sewage plan has been developed or planned for this area. Fact 10, the community is a rural residential. If the landowner in the area wishes to convert to urban residential based on the huge intrusion, they will be denied because there's 0 sewage availability and in some cases water for the homes. Fact 11, Saratoga residents that have producing wells will not be able to protect it from Van Trust. The slush fund that Van Trust has proposed is not to all Saratoga homes. Van Trust said that they are going to be providing a 7,500 feet to all homes in Saratoga. That is false. It doesn't go to all homes. It goes to a very small number of individuals within a portion of Saratoga. In fact, who actually gave up their right for remonstration. Fact 12, the majority of signed that agreement currently have water issues, and a majority are not bordering the impacted area. Fact 13, a majority have signed a petition not to build a mega warehouse in the area as in violation of past agreement with the community of Perry Township Rural Plan. That petition is available, and Van Trust agreement that they briefed to you guys is not available to the public. There's zero transparency on that agreement. Fact 14, there are not a lot more people that have signed the petition to not there are a lot more people that have signed the petition not to rezone industrial from agricultural in that residential area that supposedly have signed this other agreement, which nobody has in or sees, has saw. Fact 15, I-65 construction for new interstate exchange has not started. The exit 133 road flow development will not start until the interstate has been developed. You're looking at another 2 to 3 years for that to occur. And that's according to INDOT. Fact 16, you will be condemning this community to another 3 years of industrial construction, which we have already gone through. Additional pollution, noise, and placing Perry Township into an industrial park. You will be placing our community in an industrial park by voting yes on this. Fact 17, Zionsville will not hasn't invested $1 into the infrastructure in this rural community, even though we're about 4 times as large as your business park and you invested millions into that. Fact 18, Van Trust is currently in talks with Lebanon planners to develop another mega warehouse across the street, 400 East. Development in Zionsville is being used as an excuse for approval. This will place the warehouse again on 3 sides of Saratoga, with one side being another 40-foot warehouse with several bays of truck in the community. We will be surrounded by ponds with retention ponds and large industrial buildings. And we will be an I-65 hub industrial park. Fact 19, Zionsville, I already said that. Fact 20, 1/5 of the community in Saratoga has moved out of the area in the last year. And that's not a strong endorsement for the current development. Fact 21, have not seen one Zionsville representative come out to this community and see what's going on in this area. Fact 22, in February, I was being contacted numerous times by third party to purchase the land. When I provided the lawyer from Van Trust the cost, the phone call stopped. Van Trust, third party, entered my private property this last week, painted marked on my lawn, placed flags on about an acre of my land, and requested access, and without requesting access from the county, the town, or the property owner.
Thank you, Mr. Trescari.
On that area.
Appreciate you your comments here today, and I'm sure that will give us some questions to ask when they present here on our agenda. One other thing I would note is that I did receive some follow-up information from you opposing agenda item A, and that was distributed via email to all members of council and the mayor for their reference as well. So thank you for that. Any other, I see one other, oh, that was Mrs. Trescari. So it looks like we've gotten her time. I don't see any other attendee looking to speak. Amy, do you?
No, I do not.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Okay, there is no old business. We're going to move on to new business. The first item up is agenda item A. It's ordinance number 2020-02 to amend the town of Zionsville, Boone County, Indiana zoning map and commission petition number 2019-52-Z. Again, this is ordinance number 2020-02. Mr. Price, I believe you're representing the developer on this agenda item.
On.
Promote him.
Okay.
Very good. Mr. Price, I believe you are now a panelist and can speak and or share any information.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. For the record, my name is Matt Price. I'm the attorney for Van Trust. I'm an attorney with Denton's, Bingham Greenebaum at 10 West Market Street, Indianapolis. The matter before you this evening is a petition to rezone approximately 81 acres, what we call the phase 2 of the hub I-65 project, phase one having been approved in 2018 from a rezoning standpoint, and the development of the property ongoing today with regard to the phase one component. I wanted to clarify just a couple of things since they're fresh in my head about the timing in particular for the hearing of this matter. We did petition in November and were heard initially in December of last year in front of the Plan Commission. And Mr. Triscari at that time, as is his right, asked for a continuance of that hearing so that it would not be heard over the holidays and would provide an ample opportunity for public comment. And so we actually had an extensive Q&A in December, continued the matter to January. It was continued one other time and heard for its final time in February of this year, well after the holidays. And at that public hearing, Mr. Triscari and I believe one other individual spoke in opposition to the project. What we've done importantly is worked very hard to make sure the project is compatible with existing surrounding land uses. And we've done that a couple of ways. One is this project, phase two, incorporates the same significant buffering and landscaping as does phase one, which is phase one's on the south side. This phase two is on the east side of Saratoga, or excuse me, on the west side of Saratoga. And by the buffering, I mean a 75-foot buffer area along the property line with a 12-foot tall mound, a 6-foot fence on top of that mound, and then a robust landscaping package that complements and helps to screen the properties from the adjoining use. We have commissioned a study which we provided to staff and to the council regarding the impact, if any, of this project on the water supply to Saratoga. Saratoga today is served by individual wells. And what that study revealed is that the water problems in the Saratoga subdivision are longstanding. The water sources are in clay deposits in what are called confined aquifers, meaning that they draw water not from the adjoining property, but they draw water from within the Saratoga subdivision itself. And at times, certain of the wells within the subdivision have failed or experienced other difficulties. And so when we got the property that's part of phase one initially zoned, we were asked to install a water line within that subdivision so that when and if those homeowners needed to connect to municipal water, a line would be available to them. And it's not a matter of design. Mr. Triscari suggested that Van Trust and its engineers just simply couldn't figure out a design that would suffice. It's really not a matter of design, but it's a matter of the nature of the commitment and the number of individuals who were prepared to sign on for municipal water at a single time that drove the difficulties we had with the commitment made as part of the initial zoning. And what I mean by that is this: we could install a water line, but Whitestown would not allow it to be constructed and permitted unless approximately 17 of the homeowners agreed to connect to that water source at one time. And so it created a significant timing issue because while the homeowners liked the idea of having the water line available to them when they needed it, they weren't all prepared to sign on at one time, certainly not in those numbers. 17 to 20 is the range that Whitestown gave us as a requirement in order to assure that there's adequate water circulation through that system. In addition to that, and I'm sure you all will appreciate this, there's a cost involved, a significant cost involved in connecting to the water line, which was not part of the original commitment. And by that, I mean approximately $2,000 in connection fees charged by the town of Whitestown as well as the actual construction costs of installing the lateral water line. And so when we came back with phase 2, after having worked the better part of a year and a half trying to find a solution for installing the water line as part of the original commitment, which we're still seeking to honor here today. But what we did when we came back through with phase 2 was propose to solve the number issue in terms of the number of required signers to hook up to the water line, and to address the cost issue. Obviously, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. And so what we did is we made an agreement, what we're calling a development agreement, where we not only install a water line outside of Saratoga so that it can reconnect to the main source of Whitestown's water supply along Indianapolis Road, meaning we're going outside the subdivision, installing considerable amount of additional linear feet of water main so that the water main is looped from Indianapolis Road back west across our property and then through Saratoga and back east to Indianapolis Road. And what that does is it allows us to complete that loop, reduce the overall number of connectors that need to join or connect to the water line at any one time, and then also agreed to pay $7,500 to representing the amount necessary to cover your connection fees and your installation fees for the homeowners in the Saratoga subdivision. Now, we did not get a signed development agreement with all 22 homeowners within Saratoga, but we did for 17 of the 22 homeowners within the subdivision. And it's very well dispersed throughout the subdivision. It's not in one side or the other. It's throughout. And I've got a graphic actually that my colleague, if you'd like to take a look at it, my colleague Ross Nixon has available that we could show the council if that would help clarify the number of signers. But suffice to say that the company has come forward and made this very significant proposal in order to address a longstanding water supply issue for the Saratoga community. I should add that the Plan Commission reviewed this petition thoroughly and found affirmatively that the matter should receive a positive recommendation by a 4-to-1 vote. 2 members of the Plan Commission recused themselves honorably because they had, to my understanding, a personal relationship with the landowner that they felt like prevented them from being completely objective and to remove the appearance of any impropriety. They determined for themselves not to vote on the matter. So of the 5 Plan Commission members who could participate and vote, 4 out of 5 voted in favor of the rezoning, and did so for a property that even today is bordered on 2 sides by existing industrially zoned properties. One being the phase 1 of the Hub I-65 property, and then to the south, there's a property owned by Exeter, which is a company that's in the same line of work that Van Trust is in. That's also zoned industrial. I should add as well that it is light industrial. This does not permit outdoor storage, does not permit manufacturing, so it doesn't create odor or pollution. It's an internal business function that happens within the individual buildings. And so I think what has been concluded is that with the robust buffering package and with the significant infrastructure commitment, that the goals of the comprehensive plan are being fulfilled, and that we promote property values throughout the jurisdiction and are respectful of existing homeowners, but at the same time cognizant of the development pattern in the vicinity, which this rezoning is completely consistent with. I think I would leave it at that and be available to answer any questions that you have. I should also note, just it's somewhat awkward when you can't see your client, but my client is on the phone or on the call with us. Rafe Webster with Van Trust is available for questions, as is my engineering colleague Ross Nixon with Structure Point. And so we'd welcome any questions that you have and would respectfully request approval this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Amy, are you able to promote Rafe and Ross as panelists, just in case we have questions directly for the developer or the engineer? That's something you could do, please. I would also remind attendees that chat is not an appropriate mechanism for lobbying during this time, so please stop. Okay, questions that may have for Mr. Price or the developers?
Yeah, this is Brian. Matt, you said that 17 of the 22 households in Saratoga have signed the agreement to take the $7,500. Was that offered to all 22 and just the other 5 opted not to take that? And you're muted.
Apologize. Yes. Yes, it was available to all 22. And I will say this, I don't believe that all 5 are just opposed to the agreement. We know Mr. Triscari is, but we have 17 affirmative signatures. We know Mr. Triscari is opposed. The remaining 4, I'm just not certain of what their position is. I know some of them just simply didn't respond one way or the other. Whether they sign the agreement or not, I should add, the water line will be there. And so it is available to them, at least as an item of infrastructure. To benefit from the $7,500 payment, they would need to obviously sign an agreement to do that.
Can they still sign that, Matt? Is that still an option for those 5?
Yeah, I believe it would be, yes. Yes.
Matt, this is Joe Culp. That's $7,500 per person, correct? Per household? Okay, just want to clarify that.
And to elaborate too, if 22 do not sign, we still pay 22 times $7,500 into an escrow fund. And that money is available then for the participating households to use as they see fit, as far as paying for installation costs, connection fees. One of the things we noted early on in talking to contractors about the installations is that while the connection fees are a constant for everyone, they're the same, the costs of connecting may be varied, could be less or more. And so we're leaving it to counsel for the participating households. Mr. Jacob is going to serve or oversee the escrow function should this be approved on behalf of the participating households.
Yeah, that was gonna be one of my other questions. If someone would sell their home, would that $7,500 in escrow be available for the next family would move in?
Yes, and what we understand is that that is exactly what some homeowners are foreseeing being able to do.
Okay.
Is being able to essentially use that $7,500 escrow, if you will, as part of a proposal to sell the home. They could advertise that the water issue is effectively solved, and there is a funding source for doing it.
I have a question, Craig Melton. On the document that they're required to sign, does that document require them to terminate their current well system so they cannot use it for any potable water? Can they continue to use it for garden beds, exterior use, or is it gone off completely?
Very good question. My understanding is that the town of Whitestown, and it's not unusual, requires them to discontinue use of the water for consumption for potable water. My understanding is that they would be permitted to use it for gardening, flower beds, gardens, et cetera, grass, but could not use it for their domestic use internally to the home.
How long, second question, how long, how much time would the last 5 residents have before they could access that $7,500? Is your client, so supposedly they're able to still sign that document today. When does that fall off? When does that, you said that money goes into an escrow, I get that, but the key is, do they have 2 more weeks? If this is approved tonight, is your client willing to pay that $7,500 to those residents anyway? Because it does seem that, like in Craig Triscari's case, he's one of the most affected. I've been out here, unbeknownst to him, I have been traveling this property and kind of viewing it from all different points, as well as looking at the berms, the ponds, the tree. Well, there's no trees on the berms yet. But what I'm getting at with that is it seems that, you know, it's their right to remonstrate against this, whether we decide tonight to move forward or not. I really feel that it's in everybody's best interest in that subdivision to gain access to that water line, whether they want this development or not. Long term, it makes sense to be able to have them to have access to that. So I guess I feel that that's very important to me as a property rights advocate, that they get access to this water line. I know it's going to be in their front yard potentially, but that $7,500, it's almost like that escrow should leave it accessible for them, for those 5 that didn't sign the document. And I'm fighting for them. I know they don't want this development, it appears, or at least the one doesn't that showed up, and that's kind of my concern.
Yeah, and let me clarify something, because I think I misspoke earlier. Jeff Jacob has texted me while we've been talking, so I want to be careful what I'm saying is. His point was, to me, Jeff's point, and if he needs to be recognized as a panelist to confirm what I'm saying, then I would humbly request that. But his point is that we did ask that if we were going to make a contract to make this size of a payment, that the parties not remonstrate against the proposal, which would not be an uncommon provision. And so his point to me was, the 17 folks who did sign on and who've been champions of bringing the water line to their subdivision, and who have a need, they will have access to those additional funds. So the folks who decided not to join in, I think, would not actually be eligible to receive the $7,500. Now, they would have access to the water line. We're not precluding, it's a publicly dedicated asset that they would be able to connect to. And so they would have access, but I think I want to clarify, I think I misspoke, that they'd still be able to sign the agreement, because those 17 really have, those dollars are really for them at this point.
Maybe that goes, Jason Plunkett here, that maybe that goes back to Craig's point or question about what's the timeline? What timeline do those remaining 5 have to jump on board should they choose to do so? Or is it already gone?
And I think that opportunity has really gone, and I apologize that I misspoke earlier about that. What I wasn't thinking about from Jeff's perspective and his client's perspective is that the coalition of the willing, if you will, that has been trying to solve this problem, they are going to collect the full 22 times 7,500 and then be able to use that among themselves. And so I think it would really be up to them whether they wanted to choose anybody, allow anybody else to sign. And Jeff, if you're available, if you would like to weigh in on that with the president's permission.
Yeah, Matt, I'm looking for Jeff in the list of attendees. I don't see a name there. I see a phone number. Is he called in with the last 4 digits, 9877? Well, I think it would be good for council to hear from him. I'm just not sure who to promote here.
Yeah, I don't see his name there.
Do you know, Matt, is he on this call?
He is monitoring the meeting. He's got his hand up, he's telling me.
Oh,
Okay,
under,
Hackman,
oh, there
okay.
we go. Yeah, all right. I see
Okay.
it.
Sorry.
Okay, I promoted him.
There we go. Jeff, is that you? If you're on mute. There you go, Jeff. Do you want to or give your name and address for the record and speak on this matter, if you don't mind?
Yes, my name's Jeff Jacob. I'm an attorney with Hackman Hewlett with offices at 1620 West Oak Street in Zionsville. And just a couple of, I appreciate the opportunity. I will be brief, and just a couple of points that I wanted to make. In addition to the 17 residents that have signed on to the agreement, I also represent 3 properties on 400 South that by expanding this water line connecting out onto Indianapolis Avenue, Candace Smith and her son also own 3 properties that have agreed to sign on to the development agreement. So it's in this phase 2, it has become a larger expansive agreement. Relative to other people joining on, I would have to defer to those that have signed on, because the agreement was that those property owners would not speak up. They have borne expenses going along in this process that others that have not joined in did not bear that expense. There have been certain property owners that have simply wanted to remain out of the situation and not really been responsive. So the way this has been structured is that there's a pool of funds to handle connections. The goal is to potentially have this done all under one contractor and have it done all at one time. So I think Matt's point is correct that everyone will have access to this, but there have been a number of people that have bought into this and attempted to assist the process rather than remonstrate against it. And I think those folks would prefer to draw on the resources of that development agreement and the 4 corners that they negotiated.
Jeff, just for clarification, Mr. Price mentioned 17 of 22 homeowners in Saratoga have signed on. With the 3 additional, that means 20 total. The 3 are not part of the 17, correct?
Correct. So that there are 17 of 22 residents within Saratoga that have signed the development agreement. And then Candace Smith and her son co-own properties on 400 South. So that brings us up to 20 parcels that will have access to water in this area.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Hi, Jeff.
Jeff,
This
Brad
is Alex
Burke, go
Toy.
ahead.
Are there any other aspects of that agreement between those 17 homeowners and Van Trust, or is this the main aspect of it?
Well, it's certainly the main aspect of it. It picks up on the commitments that we believe that Van Trust have very much in phase 1 tried to be good stewards. And just as a side note, you will not hear very many remonstrators counsel say this, but Van Trust really has gone above and beyond. In the year and a half Matt talked about, there was a good deal of engineering that was done. There was a number of conversations and meetings with the town of Whitestown that Van Trust stepped up and carried the water in this kind of trying to solve this problem, pun intended. The development agreement also talks about the commitments that other residents like Mr. Tuscari will benefit from: fencing, buffering, landscaping, mounding, light standards are going to match the phase 1 commitments that were made. So those are spelled out in the development agreement as well.
So Craig Melton, so the delta on this is 22.5 for the last 2 remaining available 7,500s plus the 3 remonstrators. Is that right? I came up with 37.5 is kind of that group of 5 people that haven't signed. That's 7,500 times, times 5, right? So if the gal that lives down the street that has multiple properties gets 3 of those, does she get 3 $7,500 payments? Is that correct? Or does she get the remaining?
No, that's not correct. And there was because Ms. Smith is dedicating a significant amount of easement to allow for the line, there's additional funds going her direction.
Okay. That would have had to happen no matter what to get the looping that Zionsville requires for the Whitestown water line. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. The commitment that was made as part of phase 1 was just to have the water line installed within the Saratoga subdivision itself. So this is an additional element of the project that's been added. The purpose for it was trying to look for a solution where we could reduce the number of required connectors so that we didn't have to have a 17 to 20 threshold in order to affect the in order to pull off the design that would actually work for Whitestown from a permitting standpoint.
Hey, this is Brad Burke. Jeff, it sounds like 5 people have not signed the agreement. Obviously, we heard from one person today and on multiple occasions that's opposed the project. Just because they didn't sign, are you categorizing that as remonstrating against the project? Are these people who just haven't signed the agreement? Are they actually? I don't know if by not signing is remonstrating against the project. If that makes any sense.
Great question. I have not been the boots on the ground that have obtained signatures and gone door to door. There's been a number of residents. Jamie Bales has been the most recent person. The torch has passed a couple times throughout this project. So I can tell you that there's been one family, I cannot identify by name, or one household that was not interested in participating. There's been at least 1 or 2 households that have been non-responsive. And that's about the extent of that I am aware of. Certainly they would receive public notice and the like. There's been a number of meetings within with the developer, resident meetings and the like, and I can't speak to what their issue was. I'm confident that people are aware of what's going on, but just for whatever reason have not participated.
Jeff, looking at the map, there appears to be 6 homes in Saratoga that face west towards this new project. I don't need you to identify individuals that who or who have not, but have there been some homes that are facing west that have signed on to this agreement? Or Mr. Price can answer that too.
I think Matt has an exhibit that may be helpful.
Yes, if we could recognize Ross Nixon and have him share his screen.
He is a panelist, so he should be able to.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize. Ross, can you pull up that exhibit?
Sure, I'll try it right now.
Success.
So the yellow dot represents a party to the agreement.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
I should also recognize that there's a small portion of easement that will be dedicated adjacent to the Van Trust subdivision. There are 2 lot owners that will be dedicating a little bit on their property for the water line to access into the subdivision. Correct. It's being shown on the map now.
One of those individuals did not sign the agreement. Are they doing the easement though?
No.
Okay. So it's not interfering with their property then.
No, sir.
Okay.
So this is Brad. For the folks who, if this goes through and 17 of the 22 use the $7,500 stipend tap in to the water line that's being run, can they continue to have well? I mean, what happens to those folks? It sounds like what I'm hearing is maybe their water becomes put into jeopardy, or can they still continue to function as it?
I believe that they need to decommission their wells. I can't speak to the they certainly cannot use it for potable use within the residence. I can't speak to what they would do on the outside of the residence in terms of irrigation, things like that. I don't know the answer to that question. I can tell you that there's a water problem in this subdivision. There are bucket wells that exist within. There have been residents within the last couple of years that have had to vacate their home for a period of time because their wells stopped functioning. These folks have a good amount of equipment in their homes to make water, some, not all, but have a good deal of equipment within their homes to make water accessible and usable. Some of the residents, you know what, let me speak to lot number 1, for example. I believe that lot did not sign the agreement and doesn't wish to connect, but recognizes that they're not all that satisfied with their water. And that's happens to be a resident that I've spoken to, but very much conveyed to me that, yes, would like to see this water come into the subdivision, recognizes its import. So I think it speaks volumes to the type of project that's going on around this, where you have this many residents not speaking in front of you this evening and have signed this development agreement saying, you know what, we think that this is a good alternative for us. Having this is not an ideal situation, but this solves a problem for them that is otherwise relatively or realistically untenable for them to try to fix on their own. One of the major hurdles was trying to get people to make the financial commitment to sign on in a period of time that Whitestown required, let alone running a water main, acquiring easement, looping it out to 400 and onto Indianapolis Avenue. That was a situation that was likely not going to happen for these residents, and they recognized that.
For let me just pick lot 3 just as an example. That person, for their own reasons, has not signed the agreement. They can continue to use their well as they see fit, until which time they can optionally choose at their cost to hook into this water line. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the great question, Chuck, because I thought maybe you were saying earlier that they would not be able to do that. They'd have to have some additional infrastructure in their home to be able to still be able to use water for consumption purposes.
Only if they only have to discontinue their well if they hook to the municipal water.
Okay, so no one technically goes without water in this scenario. They just have what they currently have, and this new development would in no way force water in different ways, or just the way easements are created or anything else that would cause a problem to the current wells. And I get that this has been maybe an area that's already had water problems, excluding that.
Yeah, yes. The report that we commissioned through American Structure Point, what they identified was that there had been multiple wells that had been dug and redug over the years. And what they indicated that evidenced was historic problems with adequate water supply in the subdivision. And that this was substantiated by their analysis of the substrata that they identified by core samples in the area, which showed clay-rich soils and an aquifers that are confined, meaning that the homes within that subdivision are drawing their water from confined aquifers in clay soils within the Saratoga subdivision. They're not drawing water across, tens of acres of land adjoining it. And so what this project represents is if approved, represents a financing source really to address those historical water supply inadequacies. And that's why for the 17 active participants, when Jeff says they've bought in, he really means that. They've retained counsel, they've gone to our meetings and have negotiated a solution for themselves. And that's what we have before you this evening.
Matt, do you believe then that the reason that, and it's hard to guess, right? Because it seems like, if you've had a water problem and someone's going to basically pay for the water line to come in and give you $7,500 to tap into it, which essentially is no cost from you. So now all of a sudden you have a water supply. It seems like a no-brainer that you would want to do that. And for folks who haven't, and it's really just because they don't like the idea of the whole project, or I know you all can't answer that question, but I mean, for the people who haven't tapped in, it's got to be more than just, what you've explained. There must be some other reason other than maybe they just don't like the project to begin with.
Well, there could be other reasons than not liking the project. They've certainly chosen they're not a party to the agreement and have also chosen not to speak against the project, which I think is an interesting set of circumstances. But to your point, once you become a municipal water customer, then you also have ongoing water charges. And so I think that if you do have a functioning well and you would just as soon not incur municipal water charges, then you may just decide not to connect and rest assured that the utility is available when and if you ever choose to utilize it. But in the meantime, avoid paying monthly rates.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
And I think we can stop sharing that screen. Thank you for that. Matt, I had a couple quick questions. Much like Councilor Melton, I went and drove around the property just to see what it looked like, both the project we had approved and where this was going. And there are a lot of industrial buildings up there today. How will the truck traffic and access work for this project? Will it go along 400, or is there a different route that they may be taking to get access, presumably to the interstate?
Yes, it's the truck traffic is all funneled through access through phase 1. And so there is not an access point off of County Road 400 or 300. And so the traffic would be funneled back through Indianapolis Road and onto 267 and to either the 267 interchange or in the future going south to the new midpoint interchange.
Got it. Okay, that's what I thought, but I kind of want to confirm that because in driving on 400, it doesn't really have the type of access.
It really doesn't
for 18-wheelers. And this may be outside of your area of expertise, but there was a comment about being next to an industrial building can impact property values. Do you have any information on A, is that true? And B, not having water, what does that do to your property values?
You're right. It's not within my area of expertise, but we have been monitoring the situation closely over the last 3 years to see what's happening with the home assessments, which are based on recent sales. And there's even been a new home constructed in the subdivision since we've started development. And interestingly, the assessments, if you take all 22 homes in the subdivision, went up in the aggregate by just under 7% between 2019 and 2020. And that is consistent with a trend over the last 3 years. Assessed values in the area as a function of market values and trending are actually going up between about 4.5% to 6.5% per year. And there's been new investment there
Right.
since our project's been approved. And we think to your point that the water availability shores up a big problem going forward for this subdivision, and that the buffering and screening, which is very significant, actually solidifies what the circumstances are surrounding that development or surrounding the subdivision, rather than kind of leaving it up in the air about what's going to happen around it.
Makes sense. Last question, and maybe I'll pose this for Ross, although Matt, you're welcome to answer this too. We are in uncertain economic times. Is this project, if approved and in the various gates that goes through, shovel ready and proceeding regardless, or is this just to be ready, once there's a better assessment of the economic environment for light industrial and distribution?
And Ross is our engineer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. My client is Rafe Webster.
I thought Rafe had been promoted, and that was the only name I didn't recognize yet. So
that's okay.
Are you able to promote Rafe, Amy? I'd just love to hear directly from him if possible.
Yes, hold on.
Unless
just
Ross really wants to
find
answer
him.
that, but I don't think he does.
Right.
Okay.
All right, we've got another member here, another panelist. Rafe, welcome to the panel. Were you able to hear my question there, or would you like me to?
Yeah, no, I did. Thank you. I did hear your question. For the record, my name is Rafe Webster. I'm with Van Trust Real Estate, 775 Yard Street, Columbus, Ohio. To answer the question, so the project is a speculative project at this point. In order for us to move forward with phase two, the buildings for phase two, we'll probably want some leasing activity to occur on the phase one buildings. Now, we do feel very good about the market, even during with the crisis going on at the moment, but the warehouse market is actually a segment that appears to be performing well, and we believe it will continue that way. So we typically like to lease some buildings and then before we start the next phase, but that would be the goal, is that we'll continue on just as soon as we've gained some leasing on the first two buildings that are under construction. There is activity on those buildings, but no certain deals at this point. So we feel very good about the project. And one other thing I will say is, despite us not starting necessarily the phase two buildings, we would immediately move forward with the water line improvements.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is if, spec building doesn't start for 9 months, do they have to wait 9 months for that? But doesn't sound like that's the case. So
that's correct. We would move forward with the design and permitting and
very good
physical construction.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Webster.
Yep.
Council, any other questions for anyone on here? Questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a quick question. This is Joe Culp for Mr. Price. Not saying which way or the other, whether it's a good project or bad project. I'm just looking at facts right now. And so Mr. Triscari sent us a petition today. Petition's a petition, right? You say that there's tremendous water problems in that neighborhood. You've met, maybe the word not tremendous, but there's been water problems in that neighborhood for years. You've got a proof that says 17 of 22 want to join the water. So you would think that that's probably truth. My only thing is, if more than half the people are opposing this, is there really a current water problem?
I don't think more than half the people are opposing this. We've had one speaker tonight, and two at the Plan Commission, and the individual we addressed her concerns, and so I don't think there is widespread opposition to this project, or I think we would have heard it. I know it's fashionable to start a petition. And I think depending on kind of how you ask the question, you can generate signatures on a petition. But I think the proof is in the pudding, I think, to some extent, as far as who is attending the meeting and who is joining on, and frankly, really looking for a solution to their problem as opposed to trying to stop a worthwhile project that are not impacted by it in any way and didn't feel moved to even speak at a public meeting. And we've had, this will be we went through extensive public hearings before the Plan Commission. This will be the third public meeting where a total of 2 people have spoken. And one of those, like I mentioned, we addressed her concerns.
Okay. Thank you.
And just reconfirming, this comes to us with a 4-to-1 vote in favor, and you explained why to recuse themselves from the Plan Commission, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, I think the, before we, jump in here and vote, I think it's important. Josh, Brian and I mean, we saw this type of situation with the first part of this project, and just watching I think it's important to note, what the counsel for the developer and for the remonstrators and Whitestown town leadership and Whitestown town council leadership. I mean, I think it's really important to note that none of this, we don't even get this far without everybody there working together. And the idea that, we've got a developer running water to a neighborhood to solve a water problem, a legitimate problem, and to have a municipality, work with them like Whitestown has. I think this is really impressive. And I remember last year, Susanna made a big comment about it, and I thought, yeah, that's kind of cool. But even seeing it now, I just want to take a minute to say thank you on all sides. You guys have worked really hard on this.
Good point, Jason. Well, on that note, I'll leave it for one more second here. Any other final questions or comments from anyone? If not, I would entertain a motion on this resolution, or I'm sorry, this ordinance, not a resolution, ordinance number 2020-02.
Jason Plunkett, I would make a motion to approve the resolution.
Alex Choi, I'll second.
A second from Alex Choi. Amy, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
and Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Very good. Ordinance number 2020-02 is adopted with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Mr. Webster, looking forward to you meeting those commitments for those neighbors and addressing those water issues. So thank you. Amy, I think we can move those folks back to panelists, and we'll move on to letter B. This is adoption of a policy for the adjustment of normal procedures for the timely deposit of funding for approval, and approval of claims related to COVID-19. Amy, this is actually your topic as well.
Yes, it is. This is just a policy to temporarily allow limited frequency of deposits just during this health crisis, because due to the health crisis, it's had an effect on our on-site staffing ability, which has an effect on us being able to process all the payments and make those deposits on a daily basis. So this is something that was a directive from the State Board of Accounts, allowing us to make a minimum of 2 deposits a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We would just ask to do that during this crisis. And we still maintain the funds that are not deposited that day are maintained in a safe, locked safe room And otherwise, we follow all the same policies and procedures, separation of duties and internal controls that we always have.
Thanks, Amy. Councilors, any questions on this policy? If not, I take a motion on this policy. I'll go ahead and move to approve this policy.
I'll second that.
Okay, that's first from me, President Garrett. That was Councilor Culp.
Yes, sir.
Amy, do you want to roll call this one?
Sure. President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
and Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Very good. Policy for the adjustment of normal procedures for the timely deposit of funding and approval of claims is approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you, Amy, for leading that effort there. I want to keep you and your staff as safe as possible.
Thank you.
C, we've got a resolution regarding appropriating funds to demolish the PNC building and associated improvements located at the address commonly known as 390 South Main Street, Zionsville. There actually was a question about this in the open component. I believe either the mayor, maybe, I don't see the mayor on the attendees. Maybe Lance is going to speak on this one. Can we promote? There's Mr. Lance. Lance.
I'm sorry, something just happened if you're talking to me.
Nothing much happened. There you are. Okay, Lance, do you want to talk a little bit about this? In fact, we had a quick question earlier. If maybe you can address what, if any, plans there might be for this property once demolished.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer any question that I can, although I'm not really involved in this that much. It was a desire of the mayor, I believe, to demolish this building because it's vacant, is an eyesore, and costs money to exist. She had looked around and actually been asked staff if there were any funds already appropriated or available. I think I am connected to this project because we received good bidding on the Iron Gate project. Therefore, there were some appropriated funds in the CCD fund that we will not need for that project that would more than cover the demolition of the PNC building. So I was kind of the funding source for this after we looked at our budgets and found this opportunity. I'm not aware of any projects other than to take down an eyesore and eradicate a building that costs money to exist.
Yeah, and I suppose I can answer further on that with the mayor not being here right now. I can echo that. In my understanding is there is not a project per se. It is just removing an eyesore building as the mayor starts working on overall plans for the entryway to Zionsville. And I believe this will become temporary parking or some other use that will be put to a better use at a further time. But I'm not aware of any plans for that at this time. Councilors, now that we know those details, this is resolution number 2020-06. Any questions for Mr. Lance on this project or the funding source for the project? You're getting off easy, Lance. Well, this is President Garrett. I will make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
This is Brian, second.
Well, I saw Councilor Melton raise his hand first, so I'm going to give it to him. Amy, can you do a roll call on that one?
Okay, President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
and Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Very good. Resolution number 2020-06 passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Mr. Lance, get your sledgehammer out. Last on new business, we've got an appointment to the Board of Parks and Recreation. During about a week and a half ago, we had a member of the Parks Board, Mr. George Abel, resign. He is moving out of the area, and certainly appreciate his service on the Parks Board and wish him well in his new adventure. In speaking with various counselors, a number of good names came up, and John Salovich was the name that rose to the top here. And so that is the individual nominated to replace Mr. Abel on the Parks Board. This is a town council nomination. Any questions on this appointment?
This is Alex Choi. Just like to make a comment that I had the opportunity to interview the gentleman, and he has extensive experience in this area and is well qualified. And I think he's going to really add quite a bit to the Parks Board. Was a pleasure to talk to him about his kind of thoughts around what park systems and trailways look like and how they fit into a community. So.
Thanks, Alex, and I appreciate you spending the time to talk to him. I know the nomination came from Vice President Draylor, and I spoke to him, but I'm glad you did have a chance to talk to him as well. Brian, I'll leave it to you if you want to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to make the appointment of John Salovich to the Parks Board.
Did you pronounce his name more correct, Brad? That was a second, a visual second, but I'll accept it. Amy, do you want to do this roll call?
Sure. President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Traylor,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
and Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Very good. The appointment of the Board of Parks and Recreation is approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, we've got other matters. Dr. Choi, I believe you wanted to discuss something, and I don't know if I should call you Dr. Choi or Councilor Choi or Dr. Councilor Choi, but the floor is yours, sir.
Councilor Choi is great.
Fair enough.
I just wanted to address the community that is listening in and possibly listening to this later as well. Recently, the governor has lifted some of the stay-at-home orders and has a phased-in plan of how we re-engage ourselves back into opening up the communities. One of the things that I wanted to stress, because this weekend it was beautiful weather, so I had a chance to drive around a little bit, and just saw people seemingly taking this as an indication to no longer socially distance, to re-engage their neighbors and friends. And I have to say that I want to make sure Zionsville knows that continuing to socially distance and take precautions is what's going to be necessary for us to keep things open and to progress down these phases. I know the numbers, when you hear it in the news, doesn't seem like it, but as an anesthesiologist, somebody who basically took on working in the ICUs with COVID patients periodically, we got to the point in at least one of the hospitals that my group provides services for, we ran out of ventilators. So that was, the community didn't know that, didn't hear about it. And at one of our other hospitals, we got pretty close to running out of ventilators. So it got pretty serious pretty quickly. And were it not for the stay-at-home orders and the socially distancing, we would have been in big trouble. This is not an effort to get rid of the virus. This is an effort to slow things down so that we have enough resources in the healthcare community to control and give everybody a fighting opportunity to beat the disease when it strikes them. So what we don't want is for this to escalate to the point that we run out of healthcare resources and therefore people will die unnecessarily. But this means that the community needs to be engaged. I want to stress that socially distancing, wearing face masks, taking all precautions, despite, and I agree with lifting the restrictions. I just want to emphasize that all of these precautions still needs to be in place, and the community needs to be aware that they need to be as careful as possible. And this means continuing to watch out for the elderly and the sick, and and for religious services to take precautions as well. And that's what I wanted to let the community of Zionsville know, to stay healthy.
Wise words, Councilor Choi, and thank you for going in on the front line and your service to the community in doing that. Councilor Plunkett, I believe you had a quick question for other matters as well.
Yeah. And Alex, thanks, man. You're appreciate all your efforts there for sure. I don't know if this is a question for Josh, for you, or Mayor Styron, or Heather. So anybody that wants to answer certainly can. How might we look for opportunity or money, for lack of better terms, for some of the businesses in town that might need it as a result of the COVID-19? I mean, can we, Lance just talked about getting a good bid on Iron Gate and being able to divert some of those funds for demolition. Do we have other funds that we can potentially set aside or do something for grants or loans or something for other businesses?
So I can't speak for the mayor. I think if you think about this, our budget and how it is allocated, finding money is possible. Finding money that makes a difference is problematic. When you start looking at a government program, you know, like PPP, but at a very local level, being able to be good stewards of the community's money, being able to properly figure out a way to accept applications in a way that doesn't, that is the level playing field for all our businesses in Zionsville, and being able to then administer it, whether it's you know, a loan or a grant or you know, certain things they have to do in exchange for repayment. The conversations that I have had, the amount of money we'd be able to do would not be worth the administrative costs of doing it. You know, at the end of the day, providing a business with a $300 grant probably isn't going to make or break them. That's not a statement to say we don't appreciate all of our businesses, whether it's our small town vendors or small town merchants or you know, whoever fills these Van Trust industrial warehouses. But we've not really found a way to do it. And I don't think the county's really found a way to do it. So we've been more directing people to the federal level and those federal programs. And I know the second PPP is out there and it probably runs out of money quick as well. But I think that's as much as we can do. It's a valid question and a noble cause, but something that may turn into not doing much good and not being a good steward of our money.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. I didn't know if there was federal dollars that were available or state dollars or anything that we could recoup anything off or anything or you know, what options were there. So
I think there are federal dollars available, and Heather can probably dive into this as well, federal and state dollars, but I think those monies are available for us to use for you know, resources related to this, you know, whether it is providing PPE, whether it's provided training, things like that that go directly to reimburse the town for costs incurred. I know the mayor and her staff have done an admirable job of just even trying to wherever we can get supplies and get food from local merchants to support their businesses in that way as them being a vendor, not necessarily as a handout. Heather, are you able to dig into that just a little bit more in terms of funding available?
Yeah, so we've been watching closely, and I know I've shared with many of you, you know, different resources and pieces of information that we've received. So we've taken a look, and I think we'll continue to take a look at whether or not we would want to use any of our tax increment finance revenues to be able to provide any sort of, you know, business loan programs. That is something that some communities have considered, and I believe I've shared that with all of you via email as well. We also know, for example, that the Federal Education Stabilization Fund dollars from the U.S. Department of Education have come into the state of Indiana. So the portion that's been allocated to the Zionsville Community Schools has been or will be quickly sent to them. That allocation was released late last week, so they know what those dollars will be, and those are substantial in some cases for some of the school corporations. We also know that Main Street and some of the programs that the Lieutenant Governor runs through her agencies are also looking at Main Street grants for small business owners. And we've seen a number of other different charitable organizations step up as well. For example, I know there's been an arts fund put together for arts organizations and, smaller arts, institutions sort of around central Indiana that they can access additional grant funds as well as individual artists. So there's lots of different pockets of money, I think, coming in, and it's really important for folks to be able to access those programs. We do know, in fact, I received confirmation last week with an organization I was working with that they did receive the second round of PPP funding, and it's already been funded this week, just being Monday. So that's a good sign the money is getting out there quickly to folks, which I think will be a help.
Good question. Any other questions or comments before we move on to the approval of claims? Then we shall move on to the approval of claims. Claims were sent for your review. If there are no questions, I'll make a motion. This is President Garrett to approve claims. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Plunkett. Amy, roll call.
President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yeah.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Very good. Claims are approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. I'll take a motion to adjourn. I've been hogging all the motions here.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
First from Councilor Plunkett. Second, I saw a second like peace sign from
Second.
Councilor Melton. I'm going to take that. Amy, last time.
Okay, President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Okay, motion to adjourn is approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 7:30 a.m. I have asked all boards and commissions on the advice of Councilor Choi to meet virtually for the month of May for not only their protection, but the protection of staff, as well as the protection of the public. I suspect this meeting will also be virtual on Monday, May 18th, 2020. The Indiana Open Door Law, there is a allowance to have these meetings virtual right now through June 4th, and then we'll evaluate otherwise. So, but that is a time at the next meeting. So thank you very much for bearing with us, and have a good week.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care,
Thanks,
folks.
everybody.
Thanks.